Hello everyone, good evening. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes for others to dial in, guys. K. Anjanelu, can you please share your registered email ID?
Register email ID.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you paid the fees?
Yeah.
Okay, can you
I
just
already paid.
mention that? Okay. Yes, I do have it. Yeah, thank you. We'll just wait for one more minute, guys, for others to join. Okay, let's get started, guys. I'm sharing my screen. In today's session, we're going to focus on the web service basics. So I'm going into integrations. So we'll go ahead and focus on web service basics. So this is today and tomorrow sessions are meant for you in case you don't have prior integration exposure. See, as part of your job, you might have heard terms like SOAP service or REST API and XML, JSON, or XSD. You might have heard these terms as part of your work, but you don't know what exactly each of those terms mean. Right. So today and tomorrow sessions would help you get your web service basics right. Now, this is what I have an agenda. We would be focusing on, we'll first talk about what exactly a web service is, and we'll focus on SOAP service basics in today's session. We'll talk about what is SOAP, what is WSDL, what is XML, what is operation, request and response payloads, and how do we understand the basics of a SOAP service, guys? Not by going through the PPT, Instead, we'll pick up one standard SOAP service given by Oracle. Something like an ERP integration service, and we would try to test it. And along the way, we would understand the basics. of it. Okay. Now, what exactly a web service means, guys? It's nothing but service offered over web. That's why it's called as a web service. In layman terminology, nothing but a service offered over web. You might not know it, guys, but in your day-to-day life, you might be consuming a lot of web services in the background. Okay, so for example, if you go to Google and type in what's the exchange rate from USD to INR, in the background there might be a REST API that's called, which would fetch the exchange rate or currency conversion rate, and the rate might be displayed back to you on the browser. So somebody might go in there and let's say you're going on a picnic and you want to know whether it's going to rain tomorrow or not. So if you go to Google and type in, is it going to rain tomorrow in Hyderabad? You would get a weather report, and that information would have been pulled by a SOAP service in the background. So without your knowledge, yes, you are consuming a lot of web services in your daily life without your knowledge. And what exactly our web services help you with is it helps enable communication between the applications. And web services use a lot of open standard technologies like XML, WSDL, SOAP. You have JSON payloads with REST endpoints, HTTP methods, and all that stuff. There are two popular types of web services available in the market today, guys: SOAP and REST. SOAP is an old timer. It's there for almost like 2 decades now. REST is relatively new. And it's even though it is relatively new, it's also more than a decade old. Now, web services have two key usages, guys. Okay, so they are typically used to build reusable application components like currency conversions, weather reports, or language translations, etc. You can so these are the kind of components you typically call them as APIs. So these are the kind of components that you build once, and you use them any number of times just by changing the inputs. And we would also use these web services to connect existing softwares. So those softwares could be cloud to cloud, non-Oracle to Oracle Cloud, or it can be Salesforce to ERP Cloud. So it can be any software from any application. Now today's session, I want to focus on SOAP service basics, not by going through the PPT, I hate them. Instead, what we do was we would pick up one of the standard SOAP service given by Oracle as an example, and we would use it to understand the basics. So first of all, if you log into a Fusion Cloud application, guys, remember I logged into Fusion Cloud application here. Where did I pick this up from, guys? If you go into a Fusion Cloud instances sheet, in the onboarding email that we have sent you guys, there is, and I'm going to walk you through how to use that onboarding email in a couple of days, guys. Probably on Friday, I'll do that. On Friday, or I'll do it on Friday itself. So one of the link that you have in onboarding email will bring you into this particular sheet. And in this sheet, we maintain the Fusion Cloud instance details. In this sheet, we maintain the Fusion Cloud instance details. So you have a instance link, you have usernames that you could use. You can log in as either FinIMPL, HCM, or SCM implementation user, and you do have a password here as well. So you have two instances which are working at the moment, and I've logged into this ESCV instance. And if you compare these two links, guys, the only thing that changes between them is these 4 characters. This is ETAQ and this is ESCV. So I've logged into that ESCV instance. I've logged into this ESCV instance as a finance implementation user. FinIMPL is the user that I used, and this is a password. Okay, so this is the instance that I'm logged into here. Now, to interact with this Fusion Cloud application, Oracle has given hundreds of standard SOAP and REST APIs. To interact with this Fusion Cloud application, Oracle has given a lot of standard SOAP and REST APIs. Okay, so say for example, if I have to create an invoice, or if I have to load a journal, or if I have to create a purchase order, right? So any to load the data into Fusion Cloud, or to perform CRUD operations, create, read, update, or delete the data in Fusion Cloud application, you have hundreds of standard SOAP and REST APIs given by Oracle, and you can use them to interact with this Fusion Cloud application. Okay, and we will be using one such standard SOAP service today to understand the basics, and we would pick up a REST API tomorrow to understand. Now, where do we find this information? Like, what are the standard SOAP REST APIs given by Oracle to interact with this Fusion Cloud? We need to go to the Oracle documentation screen for that. So if you go into slide number 8, you have a Oracle documentation link here. You have an Oracle documentation link. Pick that one up and try to open it. So this is a standard Oracle Cloud documentation link. And within this link, you see that there are various offerings. And under ERP, you see financials. I'm going to get into it as an example. But remember, you have various other modules as well. So just in case you are interested in any other offering, you can just pick it up from here. So I can go into financials from here. And you see various documentation options here. We are interested in integrate option because we are integration specialists. And the moment I click on integrate, you see that there are 2 navigation options here. So remember, I picked up financials as an example, right, in the first screen. So that's why we are in financial screen. And this page is showing us a standard SOAP services and REST APIs given by Oracle. Okay, this offering, this page shows you all the standard SOAP services and REST APIs given by Oracle to interact with financials applications. So tomorrow we'll go into REST APIs. So let's explore SOAP services today. And the moment I click on that link, you see that we are looking at SOAP services for financials modules. And if you scroll down under business object services, you will be able to see a list of SOAP services here. And if you scroll down, you could see that there is a service to import journal, service to load fixed assets, You have a service to deal with payables invoices, and you have variety of receivable services to create different transactions, right? So yes, we will be using these standard SOAP services later on in the course, especially this journal service base. We will be using it in the journal import integration. So yes, we won't be picking up a complex service like a journal in today's session, because we are just trying to get our basics right? So we would pick up ERP integration service as an example in today's session. So we're not going to pick up a complex one like a fixed assets or a payables invoice, but we would pick up ERP integration service. Why ERP integration service? Two reasons, guys. This would help you. Two reasons. This service would help you. I mean, it is one of the service that's used quite extensively. It is one of the service that's used quite extensively in the integrations that we build. So in most of the integrations that we build, we would be using this particular service, commonly used service. And the second reason is the operations of this particular service has a slightly less complex payload, or it has a simpler payload, okay, which would be easy for me to explain the basics. Now I'm going to click on this so that it gets minimized. And on the SOAP service, yes, the moment you pick a service, you see description, and you see that there is a service WSDL URL here. Pick that one up, and you can open up the web service basics notes. And I'm going to copy that WSDL URL here, copy and paste it. And this is the instance details. I'm going to paste in that instance details here. So I'm going to minimize this. I would paste in the instance details here. And here, if you look at the service WSDL URL, look at the name, guys. So within the link, you see something called as a server name in it. So there is a generic keyword called server name, and you need to replace the server name. If you look at this one, you have server name. We need to replace this with a Fusion Cloud instance link. And remember, this is an FSCM service. What does FSCM means, guys? Finance and SCM modules, finance and supply chain management modules. And this is a FSCM related service. And since it is a SOAP service, we call it as service. And the name is ERP integration service, and you have question mark WSDL at the end. I'll talk about what exactly a WSDL is in a moment. But for now, let's copy this service WSDL. I've already copied it here. Now, in place of server name, I need to replace the Fusion Cloud instance link. So copy the URL, paste it in the server name. Now, this is a valid WSDL URL. Now, how do I check if this is a valid WSDL or not, guys? I can put that into a Firefox tab. And if you put that WSDL in a Firefox tab, you should be able to see the details. So if you are able to see the web service details, if you are able to see the complete web service details, that means it is a valid WSDL. So you see the web service name, you see the description, and you also get to see the operations as well. And for every operation, you have a description, and you have input parameters, output parameters as well. So WSDL stands for Web Service Definition Language. So it contains complete details about a web service. You have the name, description, operations, input and output for each one of them. I'll give you a PLSQL analogy, guys. So for example, in PLSQL package, when you create it, what do you normally have in them, guys? In a PLSQL package, you have procedures. And these procedures are logical units, right? So when you invoke a package, do you invoke package as a whole, guys, or do you invoke a specific procedure within it? What is it that we do, guys?
Specific procedure or functions we will call.
We'll call a specific procedure or a function, right? So in an exactly similar fashion, a SOAP service would contain operations, and these operations are the logical unit. So when I say invoke a SOAP service, we're not going to call the SOAP service in general. Instead, we invoke a specific operation within them. Okay. And remember, when you define a procedure, you have input and outputs, right? Input and output variables. In a similar fashion, for operation, you have input and outputs as well. Okay. Now, what operations do we have here, guys? ERP integration service. You can see the list of operations here. You can see the list of operations here. And this information is also available in the documentation. So if you scroll down here, you see that there are a list of operations here. So you have an operation to submit a job, and you also have another operation to get ESS job status. So let's try to pick up a couple of operations and try to understand how they work. So what do you make out from the second operation, guys? So it says submit ESS job request. At this point, you guys, some of you might not know what is an ESS job. I'll come to it in a moment. But from the face of it, or if you go by the name, yes, the operation looks like it's going to help us submit an ESS job, or it's going to help us submit a job in Fusion Cloud. And if you look at the first operation, we are going to, yes, this operation would help us. This operation would help us get the job status. This operation would help us get the job status back. Okay, so let's see how these two operations work. And before I show you how to submit a job with the help of this operation, or how to get the status back, what exactly ESS job means, guys? First of all, ESS job, it stands for Enterprise Scheduler Service Job, ESS, and it is synonymous to a concurrent program. It is synonymous to a concurrent program. So I'm not sure how many of you have worked in EBS. In EBS, when you build a technical program, whether it is a PLSQL or a report or anything, you would register it as a concurrent program, right? In a similar fashion, in Fusion Cloud, any technical component that you build, you would register it as an ESS job, and you would run it from a scheduled process screen. So let's first see how to run an ESS job in Fusion Cloud application. Now, if I have to run an ESS job in Fusion Cloud application, what are the steps involved, guys, if you have to do it manually? What's step number one?
Yeah, setup and maintenance. You can give to manage enterprise. There is a task
No, I
manager.
don't want to go to the job definition page. I just want to submit a job. So first of all, I need to
go to tools, and after that we need to select the
schedule
scheduler. Scheduler processes.
And even before that, the first key thing is we have to log into the application with a username and password. And after we log in, to submit a job in Fusion Cloud, and the moment you log in, you see a home page like this, just in case anybody is seeing a Fusion Cloud for the first time. So this is what we call as a home page layout. And this is called as a newsfeed homepage layout. And if you scroll to the right, you would be able to see various modules here. You can also call them groups. And within group, you have pages. So you can call them as group and these as pages. And another way to look at it is, we can also call them as modules and call these options as work areas. Okay. Now, and these exact same options would be available here in the navigator as well. So if you click on the navigator, you would be able to see the same groups that you have seen here and see the same work areas as well. So just two different ways for you to get down to the work area that you want, or get down to the page. So to submit a job, you have to scroll to the right until you see tools. And from here, we have an option to submit a job using schedule process screen. Okay, so from our tools schedule process screen, we can submit a job. And I'll just apply a filter. Looks like there are a lot of jobs running here. I'm going to expand the search and apply the current user as a filter in IMPL. So it looks clean now. Now I want to show you how to submit a job, ESS job. So we are going to say, we are going to schedule a new process. And here we would put in a name there. What's the name that we're going to put in here? We can pick up any job for that matter. So I clicked on schedule new process, and it is asking me to select, Prasad, which job do you want to run? Remember guys, these are all the jobs that are already defined in the application. Now in 10 minutes from now, I'm going to show you what that screen is. But yes, in a different screen that these jobs are registered, and whatever are the jobs that are available or registered in this particular Fusion application, you're able to see them here. So let's pick up one random job here. So let's say I'm picking a payable self check job as an example. I'm least interested in what this job does, guys. I'm least interested in it. All I wanted to show you was what is it that you have to do if you have to submit a job. Okay, so you select payable self check job, click on OK. So you need to select a job, and if that job has any parameters, you would be able to see them here. And you just have to go ahead and hit the submit button. Immediately you get back a request ID. Immediately you get back a request ID. Okay. Now you go ahead and refresh it. You see that the job has completed in succeeded state. So this is exactly how you run a job manually. If you have to run it manually, you can do it this way. But what if you have to run this job from an integration flow, guys? Let's say you're building an integration in OIC and you need to run a job in Fusion Cloud application. How would you do it? That's exactly where this particular operation, submit ESS job request in ERP integration service, is going to help you with. So if I use this operation, I can submit a job in Fusion Cloud application without logging into OIC. And I can make use of this operation to get the status back. So how do we test this operation now? So I want to invoke this operation now in ERP integration service. So what we need to do is we need to install a testing tool called SoapUI for that. So go into Google and type in SoapUI. It's not an exaggeration. It's quite popular testing tool. You just have to go to the download option, and you see two options here. SoapUI is available as a paid source, as a paid version, and it is also available as an open source version or a free version. We don't need to go in for paid version. It's absolutely not required. You can go in for open source version. You can go in for open source version, and this is more than enough. You just have to download the software or a tool. And once you download this tool and install it on your machine, you would see a shortcut like this appearing on your desktop. Any version is fine, guys. You can get the latest version. And once it is installed successfully, you can just go ahead and you would see a shortcut like this. You can just go ahead and launch the tool. So this is basically a testing tool that would help us to test the SOAP services. This is basically a testing tool that would help you to test the SOAP services. So we can go in here. And when you open this tool for the first time, you might probably not see any of these projects. And you might also see a pop-up. Probably you see a pop-up as well. You just close the pop-up. And here you see an option to create a SOAP project or a REST project. So you click on SOAP here, and you can give it a name. Okay, I'm going to say UG63. Okay, this is your batch identifier. And I'm going to plug in that WSDL URL, whatever is a ERP integration service WSDL, with a valid Fusion Cloud instance link. I'm going to add it in here. And we would say create sample request for all operations. Now what SoapUI is going to do, guys, it is going to scan this WSDL URL, and for every operation, it is going to create a sample request. Let's click on OK. You see that it is loading the WSDL definition or SOAP service definition. Scroll down. And there are two things that you're seeing here. You see that there is a standard, you see two folders getting added, SOAP HTTP and response binding. You go into SOAP HTTP folder, expand this. And after you expand the SOAP HTTP folder, you would be able to see the list of operations here. And we will pick up submit ESS job request operation as an example. And the moment you expand it, you see that there is a sample request in there. You double click on it. And the moment you double click on a request, it opens up. So you see operations, and within the operation, you see a sample request. Double click on it, it opens up a sample request payload. Now, if you look at the sample payload, what data format is this, guys? Like for every attribute, you have a start tag and you have an end tag here,
XML.
and you have a question mark in between. So this particular format is called XML format, right? Just in case anybody doesn't know it. So this is what we call as an XML format. For every attribute, you have a start tag and you have an end tag. And in between the start and end tags, you have question mark. And this is exactly where you would be passing in the, values. Now, if you look at the sections here, you see that there are 3 elements here. You see a SOAP envelope, SOAP header, and you see a SOAP body. Body is where you're going to pass in the actual message, actual XML message. This is where you pass in the actual payload. Remember, guys, one important point: whatever message that we pass as input to the operation, we call it as a request payload. And whatever is the response that we are getting back, so that is what we call as a response payload. Whatever we are sending as input, that is what we call as a request payload. And after you send a request, you get back a response. Whatever is a response that you get here is called as a response payload. Remember, guys, we don't use terms like input message or output message. We're not going to use terms like input message and output message. Instead, we would use terms like a request payload and the response payload. Request payload and the response payload. Okay, get used to this word payload. Now, what is it that I need to pass in here, guys? So SOAP head, SOAP body. This is where you pass in the actual payload. And along with and within the payload, yes, along with SOAP body, you have SOAP header as well. Along with a SOAP body, you have SOAP header as well. And this is an optional section. And this is where you pass in the actual. And this is basically an optional section. SOAP body is a core section. This is where you pass in the actual payload. SOAP header is an optional section. And here we pass in authentication tokens. Okay, so if required, we can pass in additional authentication tokens along with a SOAP request. And that is what we normally pass in. That is what we normally pass in a SOAP header. Okay, and we will see how to pass in authentication tokens in a SOAP header when we build our first SOAP service in OIC. When we build our first SOAP service in OIC, we'll see how to do that. And another important point is, yes, you have SOAP header, SOAP body, and these 2 elements would be wrapped within a SOAP envelope element. These two elements are wrapped within a SOAP envelope element. And the job of a SOAP envelope element, it just converts this entire XML payload into a SOAP message. Okay, it's called as a root element. So you have 3 elements, you have XML payload. Now, what is it that we need to pass in, guys? So wherever you see the question marks, you have to pass in the actual value. So depending on what job you want to run in Fusion Cloud application, you need to pass in that particular job package name and the definition name here. And if that job has any parameters, you need to pass in that information here. Now the question is, where do we get these details from, Prasad? Right? Valid question. If you see, when we try to submit a job, we were able to see the jobs here, right? List of jobs here. So for you to see a job here, these jobs should have been defined in this instance. And where do you define those jobs, guys? I've logged into the same instance here, Fusion Cloud application. To see where the jobs are defined, you need to click on the username. Under administration, you have setup and maintenance, click on it. Remember, guys, we might be going into a few screens today in Fusion Cloud applications. It could be confusing for you because it's the first time that we are going in there, but we will go to these screens at least 5 to 10 times by the time we finish the course. So you will feel comfortable with it. Username, administration, click on setup and maintenance. And you need to click on the task ribbon, click on global search. And you need to search for something called as manage enterprise percentage job percentage. Now, when you click on this, or when you search for this particular string, you see that there are 3 tasks showing up here. I'm interested in finance related job because I want to submit a payable self-check job. So I click on this. And what's the job that we want to submit, guys? It's a payable self-check job, right? So I copy that job and I'll search for that particular job here. And we can pick up the details from here. I can click on payable self-check job. And from the job definition, we need to copy the path. We need to copy the path. And that is what you need to pass as a job package name. Okay, so whatever is a job path that we have, job definition path, we need to mention it as a package. And job definition name, this is exactly what we need to pass here. Okay, so we need to mention the job definition name and the package name. And what else do we need to mention, guys? If this job has any parameters, we need to mention them here. Does this job has any parameters here, guys? Do you see anything here?
No.
Not really, right? So it's a blank section. So which means I don't have to pass in any parameters. So what it means is I can take off this XML tag altogether. I don't need it. But let's say tomorrow you're submitting another job that has 1 parameter. So you would have this tag and you would pass in first parameter value here. But let's say day after tomorrow, you want to submit another job and you need to pass in 2 parameters, right? So a job could have n number of parameters, right? So you have this parameter tag is repetitive. You could have this tag occur a 0 or 0 to n number of times. If a job doesn't have parameters, I can take them off completely. If we have 2 parameters, you have the tag repeated twice. If you have 3 parameters, you pass in twice. So this would be parameter 2 and this would be parameter 3. And few common sense points here. You might say, Prasad, what if I want to leave one of the parameter blank? You still need to have that placeholder and you just have to pass in a blank value there. So for example, if a job has 3 parameters, but you don't want to pass in any value for the second one, this is exactly how you have to pass in the parameters. To keep it simple, a sequence in which you pass the parameters should exactly match with what you have on the job. And I'm going to take this off because this job doesn't have parameters. And before I fire off a request, remember this, if I hit this button, it would send the request. What SoapUI would try to do is, it would try to submit this job in ESCV instance. And the first mistake that you might do is, you might hit this button, submit button. And at the moment you hit the submit button, you get back a response. And what do you see in the response here, guys? Whatever is the sample payload that you passed in here, whatever is the request payload that you passed as input, you've got the same payload back in the response. You've got the same payload back in the response. Whatever payload you passed as input, you've got the same payload back in the response here. Okay.
Yes.
So, but it is slightly misleading, right? So my expectation is that this operation should submit a job in Fusion Cloud and it should give me back a request ID because that is what the documentation says. That is what the documentation says. Because if you go to the documentation, what does it say, guys? It says that it would, we need to pass in the job package name, definition, and parameters. It's going to give me a request ID, but that's not happening here. What's the reason, guys? We are in XML tag here. If you click on raw, you will know the exact reason. What's the reason that you're seeing here?
Yes, authorization.
Unauthorized. So what's the first thing that we did, guys, when we wanted to submit a job? We logged into the application.
We logged into application, yes.
Yeah. So that's the exact same thing that we need to do here. SoapUI is not able to log into this instance to submit this job. So how do we do it? We need to go into authorization, add new authorization, and we have to enter the username and password here. So we have to enter the username and password here. Now you fire off a request, what would happen, guys? SoapUI would now log into ESCV instance with this username and password. And it's going to get you back a request ID. It's going to get you back a response. And in the response, you see a result. And in the result, you see a request ID. In the result, you see a request ID. Now let's go ahead and see if the job is submitted, guys. What's your guess, guys? Is job submitted? It should have been submitted, right? And whatever is the request ID that you see here, 830, you see that request ID here. How did we submit this job? We didn't do it manually. We have done it from outside of the application by using submit ESS job request operation in ERP integration service. And what we are doing today is we are invoking the SOAP service from a testing tool like SoapUI. But what is it that we're going to do going forward in the course? When we start building integrations in OIC, from those integration flows, we would be invoking these operations, the standard operations in our SOAP services. Tell me one thing, guys, if I submit a job manually from here, I can see the job completion status with my own eyes. Yes or no, guys?
Yes.
But I submitted this job. Let's say I submitted this job from a SoapUI. And I want to know what is the job completion status, right? Let's say I'm triggering it from SoapUI here. Tomorrow I would be doing it from OIC instance, meaning later on in the course. And after I submit a job, obviously I want to, within the integration or from within the integration itself, I want to figure out what is the completion status of this job. Is there any operation that can help me with it, guys? You see that there is a get ESS job.
Get is
operation.
yes.
So this operation, it is going to take in request ID as input, and it's going to get you the status file. So let me go ahead and add in the operation here. And the moment you submit it, what is it that you're going to get back, guys? You got back a response, and there is a result in it. And what's the response that you see? Succeeded. Did the job complete in succeeded state here, guys? Yes. So that's the exact status that you're getting back here. So where exactly this would come handy, guys? So we were just calling it as a standalone operations, right? So let me show you one sample use case so that you understand where exactly these standard SOAP and REST APIs would be helpful. So if you're going to, just let me log into OIC instance. And I would open up one of the integration. I would open up one of the integration. You can unlock this integration. And in this integration, yes, it's going to be a complex one, and we're going to build this as a fourth integration. But just focus only on the bits that I'm explaining. All we are trying to do is, yes, in this service or into this service, we're going to receive journal payload as input. We're going to get 100 lines or 1,000 journal lines from another system. With that payload, we are invoking standard journal input service. So you see here, guys, we are using ERP integration service, right? There's also a journal input service as well. So within this integration, we are invoking journal input service. And this service is only going to dump the data into interface table, GL interface table. What does it mean, guys? So we received 100 lines from another system. We invoke journal input service. Those 100 lines are loaded to GL interface table. Does that mean a journal is created, guys, in cloud?
No.
Not really, right? It's still in the interface
Yes.
area. So we need to submit import journals ESS job in ERP cloud. So what is it that we want to do? I want to come in here and I want to run this particular job because I cannot only do half of the step in the integration, and I cannot ask the user to come in here and run this job manually, right? Obviously, we want to do the whole automation. So in this service, I now have a requirement to go into Fusion Cloud application to submit this job. Not manually, but from integration. So what can I do, guys? Is there any SOAP service that can help me with it? Submit a job in Fusion Cloud?
Yes, submit ESS job.
Which is exactly what we have seen today. So I would be using this. ERP integration service. I'm not really sure if this connection has a value. Yeah. So we are going to use ERP integration service, submit ESS job request. So this would help you submit a job. Okay. And I would use ERP integration service here. And from within the integration, I want to get the status back as well. Remember, when I submit a job, I get a request ID back.
Yes.
Within the integration, I also want to get the completion status of that job back into my integration. So I have request ID with me in the response of this. I need to get the status back. What do I need to do, guys? Is there any other operation that can help me?
Yes, get status.
Get status. Whatever is a other operation that we invoke, we would be invoking get ESS job status here. And this operation is going to take in request ID as input. So whatever is the request ID that you got earlier, you would pass it as input here. And we are invoking get ESS job status operation in ERP integration service. So this way, when you build integrations in OIC, in some of them, we would be using the standard SOAP services and REST APIs given by Oracle as building blocks within them. Remember, I'm using my words very carefully here. I'm saying some of the integrations. The moment I say this example, people come to a conclusion saying that, okay, any integration I build in OIC, we have to use a standard SOAP or REST APIs given by Oracle. Not necessarily the case, guys. There are plenty of other integrations that you can build. Different patterns are available, different styles are available. So in some of the integrations, we will use standard SOAP and REST APIs. And how do you use them? You use them this way. Now tell me one thing, guys. I'm not sure if anybody would have thought about that. Did anybody guess how SoapUI was generating these request payloads, guys? So for example, for submit ESS job request, it has generated a payload with a job package name, definition name, and parameters. And for get ESS job status, it has generated a payload with request ID. Did anybody guess how SoapUI was able to work out these payloads, guys?
Metadata, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this way. What is the only input that we pass to this integration? Sorry, to the SoapUI? What's the only input that we pass to this?
Package name. That is
We only passed in the
WSDL file.
WSDL.
only the WSDL URL is what I have passed as input to this, right? I didn't do anything else. I didn't pass in any input to the SoapUI. So which means somewhere within this WSDL URL, we have all this information captured. Remember, guys, if you are able to follow what I have explained so far, more than enough. But I'll go one step deep and explain how sample request payloads are generated. If you understand that as well, excellent. If you don't get it 100%, that's fine too. Okay. Now let's see how SoapUI has worked out these request payloads. Now the way it works is, we would have something called as in a WSDL file. We would have something called as a custom data types defined in an XSD. What does XSD stands for, guys? XML schema document. So whatever are the custom data types we need for that particular web service, we would define them in XML schema document. And those custom data types, request and response data types, are used to define messages. And these messages are attached to operations under a code type element. Okay, so meaning for every operation, to the input and output, you have a request and response message attached. And to the request message, there would have been a data type assigned. And within the data type, you have attributes. So let's see that in the WSDL. So if I go back into the WSDL here, let me search for types here, guys. So you see that there is a data type here. There is a types element here in WSDL. And within this types element, you see that there is an XSD link. Copy this XSD link, paste this in here. And this XML document, this XSD document, it stands for XML schema document. And in this schema document, you have all the data types defined, like a request and the response data types. For every operation, guys, you see operation, you have request data type and response data type. If you don't see request at the end, that means it is a request data type. Response, you will see an explicit keyword there. So you have a request data type and response data type for get ESS job status. What do you have in the request payload, guys? Only one attribute called request ID of data type long. And in the response, you have only one attribute of called result, and it is of data type string. So this way, for every operation, request and response data types are defined. Data types are elements. And those request and response data types are used to define messages. You see right after this types element, right after the custom data types, you have messages defined. And you see two messages defined here, get ESS job status message, get ESS job status response message. So this is a request message and this is a response message. And to the request message, what is attached here, guys? It is asking me to go to the types. So which means I need to go in here. And it is this data type that is assigned. So it is this data type that is assigned. So request and response data types are defined first, and those request and response data types are used to define request and response messages. Okay. And if you copy this request message, let's go down further. So if you go to a port type element in a WSDL URL, you also have something called as a port type. Here you would be able to see operations. For every operation, you would see input and output and the fault element as well. And in the input, you have a message called get ESS job status. To the input get ESS job status request is assigned. And to the output get ESS job status response message is attached. So what is SoapUI doing now, guys? So the moment you add a WSDL, it goes to port type. For every operation, it is going to create a request. For every operation, it is going to create a request. And within the request, to understand what attributes it needs to include, what is it going to do, guys? For input, there is a message attached, right? It would pick that up. And it would search for that message definition. And in the message, there is this data type attached. It would go to that data type. And in that data type, there's only one attribute called request ID. That's why you see request payload created with this particular attribute alone. And in the response, you have only result attribute, and that is exactly what we see here in the response. Now, does anybody wants to explain how sample payload is created for submit request phase? Okay, shall we do work it out backwards? So to this submit ESS job request operation, this is a message attached to input. I'm copying that message. And if I go up and to this message, this data type is attached. And if I go to XST and I search for that data type, what is it that I'm going to see in here, that I'm seeing here? I see three attributes here: job package name, definition name, and parameter list. And for parameter list, again, you see two hints are being used: min occurs 0, max occurs unbounded, which means this is a repeating element. I can repeat this as many times as we want. And this is precisely why when a sample request payload was created, what are the attributes that we have seen, guys, here for submit ESS job request? What are the three attributes we have seen?
Package name and
Definition name.
definition.
And
And what is the
parameters.
third one? And the
Parameters.
Parameter.
So you guys are not now able to follow how things are tied together, right? Custom data types defined in XST used to define messages. Those messages are attached to operation under a port type element. So if you go back to the PPT, it all makes sense now. So what does SOAP stands for, guys? If anybody is interested in full form, Simple Object Access Protocol. It's an old timer, been there for a few decades now. The definition of a SOAP web service is captured in WSDL URL. It uses XML format for communication. This is how XML looks like. And a SOAP message has 4 elements in it: envelope, header, body, and the payload. And within the payload, you could have an optional fault element as well. So this is our sample SOAP message looks like: envelope, header, body. And the entire SOAP web service details would be there in a WSDL URL. It stands for Web Service Definition Language. Stands for Web Service Definition Language. And WSDL contains 4 elements, data types defined in schema. And those data types are used to define messages. And those messages are attached to operations under a port type element. And you also have a binding element as well. Now, if you go to the next screen, you would be able to see a sample WSDL Now, if you look at the sample WSDL, you see that there are two messages, request and response, with one attribute each. You have term of data type string, value of data type string here. And under port type, you have an operation called get term. To this operation, there is a message attached for input, which message is attached, get term request. And to the output, get term response is attached. And remember, when these messages are defined, guys, you can attach your own custom data type that you have defined in XSD, or if it is a standard data type like string or date, you can directly use it like this. So this is how the standard WSDL looks like. You can ignore the binding for now. And this is what we did. We went to the standard documentation screen, picked up one of the standard SOAP service, ERP integration service, replaced the server name with ESCV instance, tried to submit a job, and we also tried to get the job status fine. So we'll stop here for today. In tomorrow's session, we're going to focus on REST APIs. Any questions, guys, from anyone? Perfect. Please try
No,
out,
not today.
try this. Yeah, please try this out, guys.
Download and,
Try out a couple of things. Yeah,
SoapUI.
download and install the SoapUI. Try to submit a job. Try to get the status back. Let me know if you face any issues tomorrow. Okay. See you tomorrow, guys. Thank you.